Hi, welcome back to this project, Building a Home Voiceover Studio. I'm the Mike at michaelbearvoice.com. To say that I have a relationship with the floor in this room would be odd, but it's true, and it goes back at least 15 years. Originally, my third floor of the house was covered in carpet, and I wanted to get rid of that carpet, and I wanted to lay down engineered floating bamboo floor. However, as soon as I pulled up the carpet, I realized I had a significant problem in this room. This part of the house was added on, I don't know, maybe sometime in the 70s. And when they did so, they did it very, very badly. The joists, essentially, when they came together, they did not do this. They did not lie flat. They weren't even overlapped much. They had a very, very shallow join. And they were joined poorly. I exaggerate here slightly, but there was a real crown in the joists, which meant, of course, that I could not lay flooring. I could not interlock floating flooring on top of that with any kind of certainty. So I had to cut out a very large section of subfloor, of the tongue and groove flooring. I had to pull that up, and then I had to take my planer and sanders and grinders and all kinds of things, and I had to shave down and plane down the joists so they lay flat. Then I could put my flooring back on top of that, my subfloor back on top of that, so I had a flat floor, and I could lay the bamboo flooring, which is exactly what I did. So once I put the subfloor back down on the planed joists, I still had to do some sanding on the subfloor itself, and I used paper shims and that kind of thing to make sure that the new floor lay flat. Prior to that, my boys were quite young at the time, and they put in time capsules. So as I was opening up this floor for the electrical, to run electrical wire and that kind of thing, I was conscious of maybe finding these things. I didn't want to find them. I couldn't quite remember exactly where they might be. The idea was that somebody further down the road in posterity would find the time capsules and reflect and wonder what the hell they meant. Little did we know when we put them in there that it would be Dad, once again pulling up his floor 15 years later. So I'm nothing if not changeable. I've changed my mind. Yet again, working on an old house, renovating any kind of house for that matter, requires flexibility in decision making. You never know what you're going to find. I knew that pulling up this planking would be difficult. It's tongue and groove fir, so of course it's all been nailed through the tongues and the grooves, which means it's difficult to access the nails. Unlike the walls, where I could access the nail heads and pull everything off very carefully and preserve the wood, I'm just getting a lot of splintering on this particular on these planks. I also knew that when I pulled it out, I wasn't likely to preserve a lot of the tongue and the groove, which meant that if I put those planks back down, I wouldn't necessarily have the interlock, which makes for a creaky floor. So I decided I would pull it all up, and I'll put down 5/8 inch tongue and groove sheathing. This is OSB, which is fine, and I will put a 1/4 inch of cork on top of that, and on top of that I will relay my engineered bamboo floor, so I'll have a good solid substrate. And of course I'm putting acoustic seal on my joists. When I lay down the sheathing, I'm putting acoustic seal on pretty much every surface that mates to another surface. In terms of the floor, this will provide me hopefully squeak-free as well. I had mentioned earlier that 15 years ago I had to work on this floor to make it flat so I could lay flooring in here. And at that time my kids had put in a time capsule and I didn't want to disturb it, but at that time I didn't think I'd be pulling up the subfloor. We did find it, and I shared it with the boys. It was interesting. Nevertheless, that's out of the floor. I'm actually taking out the knob and tube here. These are bits and pieces that are left over. And though I know 99.9999% that these are dead lines, I just want to check it. So with my tester, I'll always check a live source first that I know to be live, and then I'll check my other wires. I mean, I can see that they're cut on one end, but you know, God knows that somehow by some mystery there could be a voltage in there. So I always just check as a matter of safety. I check. And then I cut. I'm also preserving and keeping as many of these little tubes as I can, and the knobs are a little more difficult to get off, but I'm trying to keep some of those, and I'm going to keep them, wash them up, and in my new sound studio I may hang them somewhere, some sort of decorative memento of this week and a half or so, or 2 weeks that I've been mucking about in the attic trying to remove all the old knob and tube. It's been a messy job, and every time I look at it, I'll remember how dreadful it was. Nevertheless, the work goes on. So what I'm doing here is I've had to cut the old subfloor away so it's more or less flush with the actual joist, and then I'm putting this 2x3 underneath, and I'll screw it to the joist,
And then I'll set my the end of my new subfloor on that, obviously, just like over there. But here I notice it's a bit high because of the knuckle of this old, this joist that's joining in old house to new. So I'm just going to take that off and I'm going to notch it there. Voila. It's nice and flush. That's the old subfloor. The new one will sit along there nicely.
You know, I am aware that I do tend to bang on about old houses and the things you find, but it just tends to slow you down. This gap in behind me here that you see, where I have to finish that subfloor, I had left that because there was quite a large span that didn't have any support. That wall was actually built over cavity. It wasn't built over the joist, so it doesn't, ostensibly it doesn't have any support. Now, I don't know that it's an actual load-bearing wall, but I didn't want to take that chance, so I had to crib in some of those 2x6 pieces to give it some structure underneath before I finished the subfloor. But in doing so, of course, I had to make some notch cuts and that kind of thing around a 2x4 that was inexplicably cribbed in alongside the joist. God knows why, but it was there. So, and of course, it's not running straight. So, you know, it's 13.5, then it's 12.5, then it's 10. And so every piece is a custom fit, and you wind up doing a lot of that kind of custom fitting and just mucking about, you know. I mean, I do like old houses, and I'll be satisfied and happy. I'll be very happy when this room is finished. Yeah. If you look at this gun, I mean, it's a pretty cool thing. These nails come in coils, and they are fed into the nose, and bang, bang, bang. In fact, if Prohibition gangsters had nail guns, they'd look just like that.
Next time on Sound Sense, we're going to be embracing the pains as we say goodbye to my old single glazed window and say hello to two fresh new faces. That's next time on Sound Sense.